Hi there, everybody. Let's get into the spirit of love today and learn a little bit more about my favorite grammar subject, adjectives and adverbs. Have you got some time to spare and do you want to revise what these adjectives and adverbs are all about? Then this video is definitely for you. In class or at home, you've normally already discussed the world famous but actually also infamous app Tinder, which is a tool that helps you decide in like half a second, based upon a picture, if you want to be with a person forever or not. Now, we have read the story of two couples, Brandon and Doris, and Jeremy and Samantha, and they have, against all the odds, found each other on Tinder and have had their fairy tale dream wedding. Isn't that romantic? Disclaimer, please don't install Tinder on a smartphone, you're not old enough, so just don't, okay? So, by the way, in this video we will be dealing with part 2 of Unit 3, called It's a Date. So go to page 7 in your iBook, use your notebook for some notes, and let's get started. On page 7, you've normally already completed a summary of the article that you've read about these Tinder couples. Have you maybe noticed something about the words that you needed to fill in? Because I have. Because you can actually divide them into two categories. The words serious, perfect, strong, real, silly, common, and good form one group, and in the other category we can find quickly, recently, absolutely, really, organically, honestly, very, seriously, and increasingly. Now, if you look at the left group, those are all words that you could, for example, use to describe like a friend or a family member. Your sister can, for example, be silly sometimes, your father is maybe serious, and you are, of course, perfect. These words are called adjectives, and these are words that you can use to describe a person, an animal, or an object. The group on the right is another special club, and apparently to join this club, the word has to end in ly, so these words are what we call adverbs. Now, we will discuss later on what you actually use them for, so let's first focus on the formation of these adverbs. Now, the general rule to form an adverb, as you might have noticed, is that it is formed by adding the ending ly to an existing adjective. Slow, for example, becomes slowly as an adverb. But of course, English wouldn't be English if there weren't some exceptions to this very easy rule, so let's list a couple of them. If your adjective ends in le, this general rule does not seem to apply. What you need to do is drop the e and simply add a y. Simple, for example, does not become simply, please don't do that, but becomes simply. Second exception, you have quite a lot of words ending in ic, such as enthusiastic, romantic, fantastic. Now to these, you don't just add ly, but you add a double ly. So romantic becomes romantically. However, please note that this is mainly a matter of spelling because you pronounce the new adverb as romantically and not as romantically, so please don't do that. Of course, English wouldn't be English if there weren't an exception to the exception. So yes, you've heard that right, exception to the exception. The word public, for example, ends in ic, but that does not seem to follow the exceptional rule, but the general rule, because public becomes publicly without the a. So keep that in mind. Next, if your adjective ends in a y, you still add ly, but something else happens. Your y changes into an I. And last, but certainly not least, the adjective good is a little bit of a special case because its adverb is well. So if you have, for example, done a good job, you can say you have done well on your exam, so not goodly. But of course, to make matters even more interesting, well also exists as an adjective. So for example, if you say Jeff was sick, but he is well now, well is actually used as an adjective there, not an adverb. And here the word well actually means that you're not ill anymore. So make sure that you know that difference. Two other special remarks you can find listed in your scheme under the title Exceptions. If you click the magnifying glasses, you will get some extra information about a couple of special cases when it comes to the formation of adverbs. Now, first of all, there are adverbs that already end in ly, something like lonely or likely or silly or lively. And this is the famous ending that you need to use to form an adverb. So how does that work? Do I then have to add ly once more? Please don't do that because that would be silly. Just leave them the way they are. Or what you can also do is use an adverbial phrase such as in a ... way or manner. For example, you can say she danced in a lovely manner. Secondly, there are some adjectives that stay exactly the same when turned into an adverb. Words such as daily, hard, long, fast, they stay exactly the same. So, for example, Peter is a very fast driver, but he also drives very fast, not fastly. Now, I know some of you are already thinking, but miss, the word hardly, that exists, right? And what about deeply? I've heard those words before. And indeed, you're actually right. Some of these adjectives that I've listed do have a version with a ly ending. However, when you add the ly, the meaning actually completely changes. So let's have a look at an example for that. For example, you can say Andy is a hard worker, and there hard is your adjective. However, you can also say Andy hardly works. And there we have hard, which normally stays the same as an adverb, but here with an ly ending. However, what you're saying here is that the meaning of the word hard completely changes, because now you don't say that Andy works hard, but actually you say the complete opposite, namely that he almost never works. So hard exists as an adverb, and hardly also exists, but they have two very completely different meanings. So keep that in mind. Okay, now, you know how to change adjectives into adverbs, but what about the difference between them? Let's cover both categories step by step and explain what is the difference between adjectives and adverbs. So, with an adjective, you generally say something more about a person, an animal, or an object. If you, for example, say, my girlfriend is pretty, then pretty is your adjective that says something more about your girlfriend. Adjectives can always say something more about another word in a sentence. For adjectives, that can be a linking verb or a verb of the senses, or a noun. So we have different words that it can be paired up with. Now, first of all, linking verbs. Linking verbs are what we call in Dutch koppelwerkwoorden. These are the words that you've probably memorized with the Zwobbles trick. In English, the most common linking verbs are to be, to become, to seem, to get, to appear. For example, in a sentence, please be careful, be is a linking verb. And the adjective careful says something more about the linking verb, because you're asked to be what? You're asked to be careful. If you're not sure whether a verb is a linking verb, a good trick is that you replace it with a form of to be in your sentence, and if you feel that it makes sense, then you are probably dealing with a linking verb, okay? Now, verbs of the senses are also often used with an adjective. So when you, for example, say the food smells terrible, the adjective terrible belongs to the verb of the senses smells. So don't say the food smells well, because well would be like an adverb, or the food smells terribly, because that does not make sense. Verbs of the sentence combined with adjectives. A second and more common type of word that is combined with an adjective is a noun. If you, for example, say, it is a bad idea, then bad is an adjective that says something more about the noun idea. Adverbs, however, are a little bit different. They often tell us more about how, when, or where an action happened. And for example, my girlfriend swims regularly. There, regularly is an adverb that gives more information about the action, the swimming. So not necessarily a person, but most of the time an action. Now, adverbs can first of all be paired up with all verbs that are not linking verbs. If you, for example, say, Peter ran quickly to school, then the adverb quickly says something more about how he actually ran. So it says something more about the action of the verb. Adverbs can, however, also say something more about an adjective. In I am terribly sorry for being late, terribly is your adverb, and it says something more about how sorry you actually are, sorry being the adjective. So you're not just sorry, but you are terribly sorry. So the adverb says something more about the adjective. Lastly, the adverb can also say something more about another adverb, and this is where it maybe gets a little bit complicated. In the sentence, my computer runs incredibly slowly, we have two adverbs, incredibly and slowly. However, you want to say that your computer does not just run slowly, but it runs incredibly slowly. So incredibly is the adverb that says something more about the other adverb slowly. They form like some sort of a pair together. So we have covered all the basics about adjectives and adverbs. Now before we're going to have a look at a couple of exercises, I want to give you some quick tips when dealing with exercises about adverbs. First of all, always read your sentence carefully. Make sure you understand the full context of your sentence. Secondly, you always need to figure out which word your adjective or adverb says something more about. Thirdly, then decide based upon the second step if you need to use an adjective or an adverb. And lastly, check and double check if you have formed your word in the correct way. Now let's have a look together at exercise 6.3 on page 9. In this exercise, you get a couple of words, including an adjective, that you need to combine into a good sentence. Sometimes you will also need to transform the adjective into an adverb depending on the sentence that you're dealing with. I think sentence 1 is pretty basic. Stupid is obviously an adjective here, but it needs to stay an adjective since it says something more about who, about Max in the sentence, which is a noun. Now, what about the word extreme then, which is also an adjective? Well, it doesn't say something more about Max. He's not the one being extreme, but it's more about like that he's not just stupid, but that the extreme belongs to the stupid. So the end result that you get is Max is extremely stupid. And here the extremely is an adverb that says something more about the adjective stupid. In sentence 2, you can immediately see that we have a verb of the senses, namely to smell. You should then know that verbs of the senses are often combined with adjectives, not adverbs. So your end result should be, this food smells good. Okay, the rest of the exercise is up to you. Always read words carefully, and for each adjective, decide whether you need to transform it into an adverb or not. However, before I go, one more quick tip. If you have a lot of different adverbs that express different meanings, such as manner, place, time, in one sentence, then they follow a specific order, and this is called the empty rule, and the word empty stands for the order in which to put the adverbs. For example, in James played brilliantly in the match on Saturday, we have 3 different adverbs at the end of the sentence. Brilliantly, in the match, and on Saturday. The thing is that these have a specific order because the first one is what we call an adverb of manner, brilliantly. The second one is in the match, which is place, and then on Saturday is time. And you can see that you have them in a specific order, first manner, then place, and then time. So the order matches the orders of the letters in the empty rule in the word empty. So that is a good way to remember it. Okay, I hope this video has helped you to understand adjectives and adverbs a little bit better. Show some love to exercise 6.3 and also the extra exercises on Smart School about the subject. And I will see you next time. Bye!